This is things I wish I could say in Sunday school. I want to share some thoughts and ideas that are different than what we usually hear. My goal is to be really honest rather than inherently faith-promoting. I hope these ideas may spark some interesting discussions with your friends, families, or classes. Please enjoy. This is the lesson for April 21st through 27th and April 28th through May 4th. Doctrine and Covenants, sections 37 through 44. Today's topics are Zion and the law. This lesson is when the early church is told to move to Ohio and build up Zion. I grew up in Ohio. I always think it's humorous that anyone could consider Ohio a reasonable candidate for Zion. Yet, I have a strong affinity for the doctrine of Zion. I'm big on group unity with the caveat that you shouldn't have to fake who you are to be united to the group. I've spoken about Zion on the podcast before. My main point was that there are basically two paths to a group being as one. The first is through conformity, individuals changing themselves to fit the group mold. The second is by the group expanding its definition of belonging. Which method of building Zion seems more godly? Which method do you see the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints doing more of lately? This time reading it through, I kept thinking about families. I see a lot of parents push conformity on their kids. I've also seen spouses push conformity on their partner. I see a lot of problems with this. Fundamentally, the message is that love is conditional. You have to change yourself to meet the authority's standard in order to be accepted, belong, be loved, whatever. Let's consider a best-case scenario if conformity works smoothly in a family. Everyone conforms to the authority figure. The family members don't make a fuss, and they make their individual life choices with the goal of pleasing the authority. It can look like everyone is happy from the outside based on the lack of conflict and the appearance of unity. However, the individuals are limiting themselves in order to conform. They are setting aside their own wants and desires in order to please the authority and belong to the family. Internally, the individuals feel so stifled. They are not happy. The family value is the appearance of happiness, not actual happiness. And that's a best-case scenario. Now let's consider the other option. Basically, you start from a position that everyone belongs no matter what. It's the job of the group to love and accept every individual. The family value is love and acceptance. Then, if one of the kids is gay or leaves the church or wants to go to college across the country or never wants kids of their own, or drops out to be a travel influencer. It doesn't matter what they figure out about their identity or whatever life choice they make that's disappointing to you. You just love and accept them. You expand yourself and grow as a person. To me, that is a picture of real freedom. I personally think that feeling free is the real root of happiness. I'm not entirely opposed to all pressures of conformity, but I think they should be internal. You can choose to adapt yourself to your group, but I want the motivation to come from you. And I actually think that's great. But I don't think demands to conform from the authority figure in order to belong to the group or family are good. I think that leads to a lot of problems. One of my hobbies is reading people's personal stories. There is a major trend of adult children distancing themselves from their parents. I think a major reason is the conformity mindset of the parents. Their children are independent adults making their own choices. The parents are still treating their adult children like minors who must respect them. The parents never grew up in relation to their children and still expect them to conform. There's a lot of tension and conflict, and then for their own peace, the adult children have to distance themselves from their parents. The big scripture quote that they use for the title of this lesson is, "If ye are not one, ye are not mine." I can imagine a lot of parents from prior generations echoing this sentiment. But I would never, and I don't think many from the current generation of parents would. And I could never imagine my heavenly parents saying it either. If I could rewrite it into something I could actually imagine our heavenly parents saying, it would probably be, "Ye are all mine and always will be. May we all work to be one together." Doctrine and Covenants 42 talks a lot about the law. It introduces consecration, but I think I'll cover that later when the law of consecration fails. Today I want to talk about laws and their purpose. One purpose of laws is to keep the governing body from overstepping. I think this is very important to acknowledge, especially considering the current state of the government in the United States. Another purpose of laws is to give guidance to people. Laws and rules are helpful in providing guide rails for those who need them. My feeling is that our goal should be growing up to the point that the choices we make are good and right, such that laws and rules are no longer really guiding us. I don't want to bump up against any guardrails. I'll give a couple of examples. Let's start with speed limits. I tend to not strictly adhere to them on roads that I know well. I've been driving a long time. I know what safe speeds feel like. As a result, I'm almost always fairly close to the speed limit when I'm driving the speed I'm comfortable with. But I do pay closer attention to speed limits when I don't know the roads. And I don't know how you really go faster than 25 miles per hour in a residential neighborhood. I'm busy scanning for people and obstacles and kids and bikes and dogs. Driving safely faster than 25 miles per hour in that context isn't really possible. And I always want to drive safely, so my speed is in check even if I'm not actively trying to follow the speed limit. But when I was 16 and learning to drive, I really didn't know what safe speeds felt like yet. I was young and learning. Speed limits were really helpful in providing guidance for me. They did keep me in check while I developed. I'm really grateful for when they keep others in check too. It provides greater safety for everyone. But at this point in my life, I personally don't need speed limits to help me drive safely most of the time. Though I am very grateful for them because lots of other drivers need them to provide safety guidance. That's one example. Now let's look at laws and honesty. There aren't a ton of laws about lying. There's perjury, laws against fraud, and making false reports to police. But overall, not a ton. We don't have a lot of laws to tell us that being honest is the right thing. These laws are more in place to handle situations when dishonesty leads to significant harm toward others. My feeling is that's because there are a lot of social consequences for dishonesty. We tend to not need a lot of laws. If you're dishonest with people, you'll lose friends and relationships. People won't trust you. Of course, there are still people who behave dishonestly. They tend to be more comfortable lying to strangers or corporations. But I still think that most people grow up to where living the principle of honesty matters to them more than the consequences of dishonesty. Eventually, we shouldn't need the guardrails for us to make right choices. I like to think about this, especially as I'm raising children. I recently told my 10-year-old that we have all of these safety rules so that you learn how to navigate the world safely. Once you learn that, then you don't need the rules anymore. You will have become a safe person. I think it's worth asking ourselves if there are rules that we continue to impose on ourselves and ask ourselves why. Are we still learning some principle and need those guardrails? Or are you to the point that you can let that go because you've internalized the good principles already? That's it for this week. Thanks for listening. Please share with family and friends. Until next time.